So I happened to be in Columbus, Ohio. I stumbled across this fantastic building. In this video, I'm going to show you how I photographed it and processed it in Photoshop to create a great fine art architectural image. Well, I find myself in Columbus, Ohio this morning. Long story, but there was a great building here I want to photograph. It's the National Veterans Memorial Museum, and I think it's a really cool piece of architecture. I think I could do something pretty cool with it. So I'm going to set up and take some shots. Well, I set up, I'm getting some shots here. I think I've got to make my way around the building. The sun is about to come behind or get out from behind a tall building, so I think it's going to hit the museum pretty nicely. So for composition, I want to make sure I capture that kind of crisscross pattern in the building. In addition, I want to avoid having the sun bounce directly off that glass into the camera. So I'm positioning it so the sun is really hitting the white part of the building. So I'll reduce the glare that way. I'm going to try to get a long exposure with those clouds in the back moving. Might be kind of a cool image as well. I'm going to get my neutral density filter out and pop that on my camera. I wasn't getting an exposure long enough to capture the cloud movement, so I put another ND filter in. This is a 6-stop filter, and so that darkens the scene even more, allows me to go out a longer shutter speed, and we'll see if this does it. So when you're doing a long exposure, you have to be careful that not too much light gets into the camera. So what I did was I closed my eyepiece, so that prevents light leak for the camera, and that helps create a much better image. Well, I think I got some great shots of this building. What I want to do now is bring you into my computer and show you how I process one of these images in Photoshop. So let's jump into my computer now. Well, I just love running into this building in Columbus. Didn't know it existed, but when I saw it, I knew I had to photograph it. So it was a good morning. What I want to do now is, I'm in Photoshop, and I want to show you how I turned this image into this image. This is a relatively straightforward exercise. I didn't do a tremendous amount here. I've already done some work in Lightroom. I converted to black and white. I think I brought up the shadows a little bit, increased clarity a little bit, but really didn't do all that much. I've also already made a number of selections, and to do that I use the polygonal lasso tool, and I'll show you those as I go. And really, to save those selections, you just go up to, you make the selection, you go to select, go down to save selection, you think of a name for it, and you've got your selection saved. As I go through this, just know that there's a lot of ways of doing the same thing in Photoshop. And so if you have a different way or a better way, make sure you put a comment down below so I can learn from it and others can as well. The first thing I want to do is really isolate the building as much as possible. And to do that, I want to darken the rest of the image. I'm going to go up to Load Selection, and I'm going to load a selection I called Sky, which is really everything except the building. You can see those marching ants around there. I'm going to darken it, and to do this, and to really frankly to do everything here, I'm going to be using a curves adjustment layer And then I'll also be using the gradient tool as well. But with the curves adjustment layer, I kind of want to darken the non-building parts of the image, so to speak. So I pull the line down, you see everything getting a bit darker. Now I do want those clouds to still pop out, and they do a little bit. So either one, I could, pull down on the left side, pull up on the right, and that'll do it. The other way to do it, by the way, is if I pull everything down and simply grab a brush. I'll take a black brush, and I'm going to have a relatively low flow, probably like 7% or so. And I could start brushing in the clouds where I want them to be brighter. Essentially, it's allowing those underlying clouds to show through from the mask. And so that's pretty good. And so here's kind of the before, and here's the after. You can see the building obviously stands out. The other thing I want to do, so for this building, I love the white parts of this building and that crisscross pattern. That, to me, is the most important feature of it. And I really want to highlight that. So first thing I'm going to do is kind of darken some of the glass parts of the building so the rest of it will stand out. So I'm going to go to load selection. And again, I made these selections already. So middle black, I called one of them. And it's just that triangle down below. I'm just going to darken this. And so it's really using a curves adjustment layer, pulling down. I don't want to make it totally black. I want some of the detail there, but definitely darker than it showed on my camera. So that's one. And then let's see, if I go to right black was another selection I made. You could see on the right side. Again, I'll use a curves adjustment layer and pull down. And I think I also, it's less important, but I did make a selection for that left triangle, that black bit there. And I'm also going to just pull that down. And so you can see this was before and this is after. Obviously the white really starts to feature even more. So let's choose the white part of the image now. So let's go up to select, load selection. I called it white. And so I really selected all of the white parts of this building. And what I want to do is highlight it, but also emphasize the curvature of the building. And you can see the selection wasn't perfect, but it'll work. And so what I want to do is choose a curves adjustment layer. I'm going to pull up, and that's going to brighten this selection. You can see that white getting quite a bit brighter. I am going to reselect. I'll choose a gradient tool. Now, when you want to highlight curvature, I think using the reflected gradient tool is really a great tool. You want your foreground color to be white, and if you pull out from the middle, just that middle section will be brighter. So here's the before, here's the after. To emphasize that even more, we can darken the outsides of it. And so what I'll do is I made the selection again, I reselected. I'm pulling down. This is going to darken the entire selection. I will then reselect. I'm going to choose my gradient tool. This time I'm going to have the foreground color black. And again, pull out from the outside. And the outside now is going to be darker. So here's the before. Let me deselect by hitting Command D. That's the before. That's the after. And you can see that middle part of the white selection, is obviously highlighted. I also darkened the bottom part of this image a little bit. I did that by loading the selection I had used originally of the sky, again, which was everything but the building. I'm going to choose a curves adjustment layer and just pull down a little bit. Again, that's going to darken the whole selection. But if I reselect that selection, choose a gradient tool, this time I'll use the linear gradient tool. I'm going to make my foreground color white. If I pull up from the bottom, just the bottom half of that selection will be darker. And so I'm going to deselect by hitting Command D on a Mac And then I guess overall I can add a little bit of contrast by pulling down on the left side of a curves layer and pulling up on the right. Probably a little bit too dramatic. Probably want to go that dark. But that gives you a sense of what the process was like. Again, pretty straightforward. I didn't do anything that dramatic to it. But I think it's a great building, and I like the way I highlighted the curvature of the white pieces of the building. Hey, if you like this video and you want to see more of them, make sure you hit that subscribe button on the lower right. And if you do have any comments or questions, put them in the link in the comments down below. Take care.